The following video is sponsored by the tabletop RPG Misfortune. More information about that later on. I've already talked a good bit about powers in HeroAca, why I think they're cool conceptually, how they might possibly work, and what they even mean to characters regarding their desire to pursue heroism. And now we've finally gotten to the point in the anime where I can go beyond what I've said prior. Get it? Go beyond because, As I was saying, I can now add to what I've said prior because Class A have finally begun developing their ultimate moves, taking their next logical steps to develop both their quirks and identities as heroes. And I don't think I have to explain in much detail why I love this progression. On one level, it's just cool from a continuity standpoint since we got introduced to a number of ultimate moves in the very first episode of the series.
The preemptive? Finding? Lacquer chain prison! Texas Smash!
And there's also an innate sense of curiosity as to what individual ultimate moves might look like. There are more obvious ones like we see with Bakugo, and there are also ones that are more similar to Deku's use of Full Cowl. For example, Tokoyami thinking to cloak himself in Dark Shadow in order to compensate for his weakness in close combat. It's so simple, yet the result is undeniably badass. It can also be fun to kick this curiosity up a notch and speculate about what somebody's ultimate move could be. I know because my friend and I actually killed 2 hours in a Jimmy John's doing just this. And so before I discuss other reasons why ultimate moves are awesome and why they honestly fit perfectly within HeroAca's world, I thought I'd share some of the ideas that my friend and I spitballed. Also, before we get into them, I just want to make something clear. I am ahead in the manga. That being said, I don't know everyone's ultimate moves. So if one of these just somehow out of random chance ends up being one, it was not me pulling your leg in an attempt to sneak a spoiler by you, okay? Alright. So before we get into Class A, I just want to discuss one ultimate move that is most likely a thing and just never ceases to make me laugh. That being what Mandalay's might be. We've seen she's capable of distracting her opponents by making them hear her thoughts. We don't know the extent of how strong her power is, but logically speaking, if she was able to concentrate on just one enemy rather than trying to talk to a number of villains, I could see this being a legit ultimate move. Just imagine her using telepath to scream at the top of her lungs inside her enemy's head. That would be beyond disorienting, and unlike Present Mike, there would be no way to drown it out. But there's also another step to this that delves a little more into the realm of speculation. You know how your brain is able to do that one trick where if I show you this picture of Morgan Freeman, and then this text of HeroAca erotic fanfiction, and then just shut up for a few seconds, you most likely had the displeasure of reading that in his voice. So one, I'm sorry, but two, what if Mandalay could do that? Project someone else's voice into her enemy's head so long as she's heard it before. That would be incredibly useful, and then without a doubt I would want her ultimate move to be this.
I release a sonic wave from my mouth.
Now when we get to the villain magnets that are Class A, we've begun to see the direction some are taking in the process of developing their signature moves. Like we saw in the anime, Ida's Recipro Burst is basically already one for him, Bakugo is steadily becoming a one-man army, firepower and all, and several others are exploring more creative options. And then there's whatever the hell Minetta's doing. But let's stick with this idea of creativity, because obviously everyone's not going to be able to rely on raw fire or ice power. For example, if he wanted to, Sero could probably go for a move that's similar to what Kamui Woods has, a preemptive strike to neutralize his opponents before they can do much damage. It's simple, and while it might not help in a rematch with Todoroki, I think it's right up his alley. But with a little bit of ingenuity, I think he could also opt for a more offensive move. In particular, I could see him taking inspiration from his time on Bakugo's team during the sports festival. Basically, what I'm thinking is he shoots his tape at his enemies, but intentionally misses. Then as soon as it hits the ground or wall behind his opponent, he capitalizes on the momentum by jumping and reeling himself in. It'd catch his opponents off guard and also gives him some options to be more freeform after launch depending on the villain's fighting style. Another ultimate move that I think could also be very versatile is the one I thought of for Shoji. His quirk is one that is primarily neutral or defensive in nature. It's incredibly good for recon, but as far as combat goes, it's not the best. So I think he could capitalize on his strengths. I'd call it his all-seeing eye or something to that effect. What he'd do is essentially target an opponent and then scan them with his tentacles, using every appendage alternating between each variant he has in rapid succession. I'd like to imagine that with enough training, Shoji would be able to use this to get a read on the vital signs of his opponents. Then he'd be able to exploit that information in their confrontation or pass it on to someone who has a more suitable quirk. I'd also like to think that this ultimate move, in combination with his stoic demeanor, would make him quite the formidable interrogator after a villain is taken into custody. Moving on to the girls of Class A, I've thought for a while about what Ochako's ultimate move could be. She's discussed just working on floating herself and fighting during that, but I want to think bigger. It was a little difficult because everything she's done thus far that's been comparable to one has been aided by her environment. And ideally, an ultimate move is something you could whip out no matter the situation. I mean, it's not like she can carry around a stone pillar with her at all times, as funny and intimidating as that would be. So I came up with something that sort of crosses into the realm of speculation a bit, but not so much that it's unrealistic. What I'm thinking is Ochako develops a move that allows her to put a time delay on her zero gravity. In other words, after she touches something or someone, she can opt to wait to float them. I'd imagine as a visual indicator of this, she could clench one or both of her fists. And the longer she does this, the more force with which the item or person gets launched, because she is now trying to prevent it or them from floating. Of course, the longer she delays it, the more difficult it gets to not float them, and the object's mass would also likely play a role. I also like this idea because I could totally see Ochako pulling an inverse of her meteor shower versus Bakugo. She's running from or fighting against a foe, and as she's doing so, she's tossing small projectiles onto the ground, maybe also touching a rock or two. Then she gets her opponent in the best position thanks to her training from Gunhead, and wham! Dozens of projectiles come shooting up from the ground at high speed. It would definitely add an element of unpredictability to any of her fights. Now, even though we just covered Best Girl, I've saved the best ultimate move, or at least my personal favorite, for last. Its hopeful wielder, Momo Yaoyorozu. Hers is a quirk that has crazy potential for an ultimate move because it's just incredibly diverse. She's already shown numerous times that she isn't really limited when it comes to size or complexity of the object, so long as she has enough fat to burn. So I'd like to see her ultimate move kick things up a notch in the creative department. I want her to design and then be able to make her own invention. Not just a shield or cannon, but something that her enemy is immediately scared of, or at least doesn't know what it can do. So what invention did my friend and I decide on? Well, we think it'd be awesome to see Momo go full Iron Man. Just form a battlesuit around herself with her quirk. Ultimate defense and offense in one, not to mention badass. I think she'd design it to have quickly removable components, just so she could use her quirk still if need be, and I think her process of developing it would really be the perfect opportunity for Momo to challenge herself. Even if it isn't something like a battlesuit, I just hope her ultimate move allows her to use something she cooks up. Or you could partner her with Hatsume for a week and just see what happens. You can't tell me that wouldn't be a fast track to some crazy inventions. Or at the very least, it would be incredibly entertaining. Regardless, she's definitely smart enough and just needs to start thinking in a different manner to create something awesome. Now, I know I said that was the last one, but I did want to discuss an honorable mention because I really don't know where their ultimate move is going to end up. That being Todoroki's. He's working on using his fire and ice at the same time, but I struggle to think what that might culminate in aside from hot rain or steam. I suppose one idea could be if he learns to control that huge explosion through heating and cooling that he used during the sports festival. That might be useful, but really the only other idea that came to mind was him being able to use his ice to shield the surrounding area to then limit the collateral damage as he just goes off with his fire side. So yeah, either way, I'm really interested to see what his ultimate move ends up being. And obviously some of these are more likely than others, just because we don't necessarily know how much control students have over their quirks yet. But to help reinforce my guesses without spoiling anything, I will say several ultimate moves we'll get to see from Class A come about through a bit of quirky creativity, pushing the limits of what you think their powers are capable of. In particular, I like the moves Kirishima, Toru, and especially Sue think up. Seriously, keep an eye out for hers. And also let me know your ideas for ultimate moves. I want to hear what you come up with. Beyond this fun speculation though, and how much this progression just feels natural, I also love how ultimate moves make perfect sense within the society that has developed in HeroAca. Because you don't see these named signature techniques in modern superhero films. Maybe it's because they can easily come off as cheesy, even for Marvel. The one exception might be Guardians of the Galaxy, but even then it would have to be something where Rocket, Drax, or Gamora calls Quill stupid for calling out a move before he does it. But that cheeky, cartoonish feel they have, not so shockingly fits quite well into an animated world. And that's far from the only reason. To find another, we need only look back to 1987 and one word from one movie.
Walk this way, take a look. We put the picture's name on everything. Merchandising, merchandising.
Yes, as we've touched on in previous videos, this society and its countless pros succeed and fail based on their popularity. It's why many of their costumes are so flashy, and at least partially why ultimate moves are so prevalent. They provide another aspect of their hero persona that can be marketed. Midnight even says that heroes without ultimate moves are a rare breed. This could be a reason for that, in addition to what's said in the show. I think there's also further proof in the fact that aside from All For One kind of naming off the different quirks he's stacking together, we haven't seen any villains in this universe calling out a named signature move of their own. Because if we're continuing with this train of thought, then many likely see it as another aspect of hero society that they detest. And I can't really see a lot of the villains caring about popularity or marketability. Really, the only good, or I guess evil, it might serve them is to strike fear into opponents and nearby citizens. On the opposite side of this coin though, it then makes all the more sense why heroes would have them. As much as they might exist to market their hero personas or make themselves feel unbeatable, I think it's also used as a sign of reassurance for the public. Something to give them another bit of hope when it seems lost, letting them hear the call of a move that makes them think the day is won and that they can sleep soundly tonight. Why else, other than it being awesome as hell of course, do you think All Might's last act as a pro hero was punctuated with United States of Smash! Ultimately, these moves are an important step in the development of our characters as heroes, but they are still just that, a single step. Like their training during the summer camp, this progress isn't going to happen immediately, but the results are well worth the effort for both them and us as an audience. And while you might never get to experience the satisfaction of these ultimate moves verbatim, you can certainly come close. Full Dive VR is still a ways off, but in the meantime, I've found tabletop RPGs are a great stand-in. I have a D&D campaign going with some friends where I play a half-orc monk named Daruk. He's got a good heart, but is a tad bit socially inept, seeing as how he raised himself since age 10 after his order, who wouldn't let him learn their ways, were all slaughtered. It's okay, they were a bunch of old racist guys. Anyway, yeah, I've had more fun experiences playing as him than I can count. Everything from starting a bar fight that my DM didn't have planned in session 1 because I failed horribly at eating a turkey leg, to when I used a giant fist of air to knock my enemy onto a desk that had just been set ablaze by my friend. Point is, it can be an incredibly fun time, and if you're looking for a tabletop RPG more within the realm of how HeroAca tells its story, then I have one for you. Misfortune is created for fast, character-based role-playing. It's quick and easy to start whatever kind of game you're trying to play. You only need a couple of dice, some paper, and obviously the game itself. The rules are short and simple, with a laser focus on player characters being the main drivers of the story, like how in My Hero Academia. And most all things regarding their characters are in the player's hands, the good and the bad. Failure, getting hurt, or even dying in Misfortune are all things that are decided by the player, just not all at the same time. Will you try to succeed but risk death? Will you get injured to gain something in return? The difficulty of the roles become harder as the dramatic tension increases, and successes become even more reliant on taking Misfortune to re-roll those dice. Laid out like a comic book or manga, Misfortune is available at DriveThruRPG as a pay-what-you-want release. The creator of the game, Artificer Games, is also holding an Ask Me Anything on Reddit after this video goes live. Link is in the description for both the game's product page and the AMA. So yeah, definitely check that out if you're into tabletop RPGs, and let me know your thoughts on the entire video down below. As always though, thank you for watching, and an especially big thanks goes out to my awesome patrons, PenguinPandaZero, OverjoyedSoup, MVPino, James Morton, Mr. Idealist, Marbled Ranger, and everybody else whose continued support also helps make videos like these possible. Links to that Patreon, my shirts, and everything else are down below or on the screen right now. Ring that bell plus Ultra Style, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time.